And it's now the time of the questions, but it's still 5:38 in the morning in Nevada, so we do not have Professor Richardson, unless I'm mistaken, with us. So I will propose to ask Alessandro Micarelli some legal questions, which in fact can be addressed both to Professor Richardson and to Alessandro. And in case Professor Richardson joins us later, of course, we can ask his opinion. Putting together the different questions for Professor Richardson and Alexa Micarelli, I believe they can be composed in one question. And this is a political and legal opinion on what remedies do exist in case Russia, as it has stated, even through a law, will continue to ignore the decisions of European Court of Human Rights and anything coming from supranational jurisdictions. For instance, can Russia be expelled from the Council of Europe? And what other measures will be open to the international community against a state which signs international treaties and then publicly announces it will disregard them? Alessandro.
Thank you for your question. Let's start by saying that it's not only Russia that doesn't follow the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights. We are from Italy, and we could mention a lot of cases in which Italy has not followed the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, and other countries like France as well. Personally, yes, there are remedies when a country does not constantly follow the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights. There is a system of persuasion, so the Council of Europe will be persuading the member state to, to adjust the behavior, and start following the rules as they should. There could be suspension of the very final remedy. In my opinion, because someone asked the question, should Russia still be in the Council of Europe? Well, in my opinion, yes, Russia should still be in the Council of Europe for several reasons. One of them is because Russia is part of Europe. It's a very important country. And even though there are problems can be fixed. And if we have a look at all the judgments, just in the field of Article 9, freedom of religion and belief, these judgments by the European Court of Human Rights have changed the condition of a number of religious minorities within the Council of Europe countries, even though in some cases the concerned state in this specific case has not followed the judgments. So judgments regarding Russia have also influenced the legislation in other countries, or in some way have persuaded the legislator to follow this kind of minimum terms adopted at European level. Of course, there is still a lot to do in Russia, like in other countries. And I personally believe that change may happen also in Russia. It will take time. It will take a lot of efforts. We can support, all of us from all over the world. We are trying to do something. But of course, what is much needed is people in the country, from the country, helping the country to develop from inside.
Gordon, I have two questions which were sent to you. The first one is about the flag case. Somebody has read in a magazine called Bitter Winter, a name I've heard before, that in the last few days there have been cases of Jehovah's Witnesses incriminated in China for refuse to salute the flag. And how will you assess these flag cases in China? Why this issue of saluting the Chinese flag or singing the national anthem is coming out now, while Jehovah's Witnesses have been in China for a while? And what is the situation in China now compared to the situation in the United States when the flag case is happening?
China right now is undergoing a very extensive period of religious repression. The witnesses have been caught up in it, and while they are a relatively minor part considering what's been happening in Tibet and other parts of China, they are necessarily under attack. They are considered a foreign religion, and as such have no rights in China. They certainly are not incorporated or have any personhood before the court. Chinese have moved against various groups at this particular time. In the United States, the witnesses were singled out as one of several pacifist groups for special attention. That attention largely went away after World War II was over and moved to other subjects. And today, of course, the witnesses have pretty full rights across the United States. The Chinese and American cases are very, very different. They share some characteristics if you compare the 40s in the United States with present-day China, but that's all.
And the second question for Professor Melton is, in your speech, you mentioned that opposition to Jehovah's Witnesses in the United States, apart from the patriotic cases of the flag, this opposition came mostly from what you call counter-cultists, meaning religious opponents who saw the Jehovah's Witnesses as heretics rather than from secular counter-cultists. However, in the last few years, we have seen some secular anti-cultists who started by campaigning against Scientologists like New York journalist Tony Ortega, or actress Leah Remini, who happens to be a former Scientologist. And originally their TV shows and blogs were directed only against Scientology, but now they have added Jehovah's Witnesses. So do you believe we are now seeing in the United States a revival of secular anti-cultism directed against the Jehovah's Witnesses?
I don't think so. The Scientologists went through a period where one of the accusations against them was that they were very litigious. The Scientologists defended themselves by saying that they had picked up the court cases from the witnesses and were moving forward and hoped through their court cases to greatly expand religious freedom in America, even as the witnesses had done. However, Scientology right now still has a lot of public criticism. It's still okay in the American media to make fun of Scientologists, to denounce them, criticize them. There's no such opinion against the witnesses at present. They have a very good standing in America's public culture in such a way that the Scientologists have not yet attained. So I don't think any criticism against the witnesses from secular sources is going to go anywhere. There are particular issues that the witnesses have right now. As with the Roman Catholics, they have issues concerning a few members who have abused children sexually. But other than that, they're in pretty good standing with the American public. I don't think any wide-scale attack upon them is going to go very far.
So thank you, Gordon Melton. And here comes another question for Alessandro Amicarelli. And this is while FECRIS has been criticized by US CRF, by scholars, by others, it seems when in countries like Italy or UK, FECRIS affiliated personalities and groups still are taken very seriously by the media. And in fact, we read in the media more assessment of the Jehovah's Witnesses by people associated with FECRIS when we read balanced accounts by scholars. So do you agree that the situation is as such? And if there is as such, what can be done to change it?
Okay, because the question mentioned the UK and Italy, and I know both the countries, we have to stress the fact that Italy and the UK are very different countries. Socially, they cannot be compared from the point of view of religion. Even though UK has an official state religion, which is the Anglican Communion, which is specific of this country. On the other hand, Italy is the, let's say, is the representative country of the Roman Catholic Church, but the UK is a very, let's say, secular society. I don't mean that it's secularized as we would call, for instance, France, but it's a very welcoming country when it comes to religious minorities. Wherever we go around in London, we can find temples, churches, mosques, synagogues, one next to the other. We cannot say the same about Italy. And also, I never heard of any campaigns against the Jehovah's Witnesses in the UK, like the ones we used to see, especially in the past, in Italy. Now, this said, going back to the question, yes, to FECRIS that are quite active in Italy and in the UK, and the media take quite seriously their reports about the Jehovah's Witnesses. However, the impact on the society is different. So in Italy, because generally the population doesn't have a very correct understanding of the witnesses, and there has been a lot of propaganda against Jehovah's Witnesses. When the media report in a negative way about the witnesses, people tend to accept here in the media as correct information, not as fake news. In the UK, it's different. Nobody does really care much about what the media say about minorities, because here we are used to have neighbors that belong to a number of religious and spiritual minorities. So it's very common to have friends who are Jehovah's Witnesses or employees. One of the receptionists in my office is a Jehovah's Witness. I have neighbors who are Jehovah's Witnesses. So whoever knows Jehovah's Witnesses and hear in the news some wrong information will be perfectly aware that that kind of information is wrong, basing on own personal experience. The situation in Italy and in other countries is different. So what can we do? Going back to the question, our organizations, all of us together, we've been promoting education at different levels. So education, not only in the schools, but also education at political level, because our legislators, in many cases, they know nothing about the witnesses, what the problems they have in some countries. And this is also what transpires from the OSHIRF report, where in the recommendation, it is said we need to provide training for our diplomacy as well. So that's very important that we stop the negative propaganda against the witnesses.
Thank you. And we just received another question for Gordon Melton. And the question is, and I don't know if you agree with the statement that Jehovah's Witnesses appear to have been more successful than other religious minorities in the United States before the courts. So did this happen because they had a better legal strategy or better lawyers, or perhaps because being a Christian group, the courts were more sympathetic to the witnesses than they were to other religious minorities? So that's a question for Gordon Melton.
That's an interesting subject. They were successful out in the countryside, so to speak, growing their membership because of their aggressive evangelism. They were very assertive in reaching out to new members, and they were on a growth trajectory through the entire 20th century, still are, as a matter of fact. So in terms of minority religions, they had a much larger following. In the courts, they were successful because they, again, were assertive. Where other groups had issues with that might have taken them to court, they often stopped at the lower court level and did not go all the way to the Supreme Court. They had a very fine lawyer, a fellow named Covington, who took their cases to the Supreme Court, and they argued them in a quite sophisticated way. And that persistence, which is somewhat like the Scientologists more recently, allowed them to go to the court and win their cases, where other groups just were not persistent at all.
Thank you, Gordon, and I believe that concludes our set of questions, and we will hear from Professor Richardson at the end of next session, because he will participate in next session, so questions can be directed to him as well. So I will propose, it's now 3:57 Vilnius time, to have another coffee break, and respecting our original program at 4:15 to be here for the next session, 4:15 straight, and next session will be chaired by Rosita Sciorite.